I see a couple people joining us. Great.
Huh?
Um,
Sorry about that. I was on mute.
oh,
Okay. So I will be talking to the masses today about AI apps that we have available. But I want to first start by talking about how the we recently attended the CSUN conference, and AI was such a big hot topic there. If no one is familiar with it, or if anyone isn't familiar with it, the CSUN conference happens every March, and it's Assistive Technology Conference sponsored by the California State University of Northridge, and almost every presentation involved some component of AR or impacts of AI. It almost felt like the next presentation I was going to attend was going to be called AI because it's trending.
hmm,
But anyways, I think AI is amazing. So I am going to talk about a few apps that can be used with students to help with productivity. Before I get into these apps, I do want to have the caveat that I do not know what every single school district's policy is on AI being on district devices. So that would be something you as a district employee would need to talk about with your IT department or your admins. However, I will always advocate that although AI should be used responsibly by students and by all users, that it really has some amazing, promising benefits for independence in the classroom for our students. So I'm going to figure out how to share my screen because I have some slides. Okay, do you see this slide deck?
Yep.
yep,
Woohoo!
yes.
Awesome. Okay. So, so these are going to focus on apps that are specifically meant for mobile or on a tablet. So before we talk about the kind of apps you are going to use with your students or that your students might benefit from, we should talk about some prerequisite skills or just knowledge that they should have before using AI. So they should be able to, kind of do the basics of being able to manipulate apps, whether that's through Zoom gestures or through voiceover gestures. There's also, you'll see as we go through some of these apps that you have the capacity to have conversations with the AI about whatever you're getting information about. So the ability to ask clarifying and meaningful information questions to get meaning and information from the descriptions and responses that AI generates. And then the ability to kind of judge when an AI might producing a hallucination in terms of something that's not actually there, but the AI is saying is there. And usually they're pretty contextual. So you'll see a lot of these are going to focus on image descriptions. Um, and so a hallucination might be, for example, I had an image of my guide dog and I ran it through AI and it called his harness an umbrella and it said that
Hmm.
he had an umbrella on his back. But that seems a little illogical. Dogs don't wear umbrellas on their backs. So it was one of those things that you could pretty easily at least investigate. Are you sure there's an umbrella on his back? And kind of gather clarifying information to debunk that hallucination or to get the AI to regenerate an answer. But just some of these questions and some of these skills that might become handy if you're starting your student using AI. So the first one is Be My AI. And so Be My AI is a AI powered description tool inside of the Be My Eyes app. The Be My Eyes app is 100% free and it is a volunteer visual interpreter service. This means that a, a user can press a button to call a volunteer to ask for visual information in their environment. But it also uses ChatGPT to do the same thing with photos. So a user can take a photo in the app and then have it generate a description of what is in that photo. You can then have conversations with the AI to get more information about that description if you're looking for a piece of information. So this photo here on the slide is kind of more about a landscape and kind of a description of this landscape. But in terms of in the classroom, it could be used to take a picture of a printed material that's handed to your student, or a picture of an image in a book, or a picture of what's on. Oh no, I don't know how to fix that. Okay, time to process up to a minute the image. This one can give you a description in about 2 or 3 seconds. The description's super basic, but it you can ask follow-up questions if you have that paid model. I think um, you have a limit of follow-up questions in the free model, and that is what distinguishes this one from the other ones that we're talking about, that it does it really instantaneously. And then Access AI is kind of similar to Be My AI in that it is integrated into an app that has humans as visual interpreters. This this one is a paid model. I'm not quite clear if you can use the Access AI features if you don't have a paid monthly subscription. But the cool thing about this one is, unlike Be My AI, when you take a picture with Access AI, if you are paying for the Aira subscription services, if you are kind of new to AI and you want it to verify what if the description is correct, you can send that image to a visual interpreter and they will verify if that description is accurate. So there's that kind of cool model too. And then PickyBot does photos and videos. Um, and the cool thing is if this one is free, but the paid description model lets you add and keep the audio description in your videos, so you can have videos with AI generated audio description in them, and that's kind of what distinguishes this one from all the other ones. And it's a pretty cost-effective app, but all of these are using Wi-Fi and internet or cellular. So you will need cellular or Wi-Fi capabilities. So you couldn't use it on, let's say, like a device that doesn't have cellular capacity and is not connected to Wi-Fi. And then Seeing AI is an entire app just dedicated to different ways that AI can be used to interpret information. It can recognize currency, images, it can read text. The thing I want to make kind of clear about Seeing AI is when it's reading text, you can capture multiple pages at a time, but it does have a limit. So you, I think, can only save 5 or 6 pages at a time. So I've been asked before if Seeing AI could be used for a book. And that would be pretty difficult because you would have to have multiple saved files of all of these 4 or 5 page images of a book. But it also has object detection. It does require that a device has LiDAR, which is in all Pro devices starting with 14. And those are the AI apps that I have for students. Sorry for the screen share issue. Um, but ultimately, these apps provide a lot of ability for students to get contextual information about their environment or assignments. And while some of them do have subscription models, you do get a lot of power with free. So that's it for my part.
Mm. All right. And next we have Max talking about AI and JAWS.
Yeah, so as Allison mentioned, we just got back from CSUN and I decided to go to the Freedom Scientific talk on all of the updates and changes they made to JAWS 2026 and things that are coming up. And there are some really exciting things in the works. Um, it should be noted that they are cognizant of the fact that schools have a slightly different license situation. So they're going to work through that with each individual organization. But they have this thing now called Page Explorer. And essentially what it does is it takes a grab of all of the information inside of a website and really summarizes it for you. And so in JAWS 2026, by pressing Insert and Shift and E when browsing in Chrome or really any browser, JAWS now uses AI to analyze and structure it all for you. It really looks at key elements like the main content area, any regions that exist, gives you a summary of the headings and the links, if there are contact details, footer information, sidebar information, and it also will tell you about any pictures, tables, or featured articles. All of this stuff or information I grabbed from their site, and I also saw a YouTube video of people demoing it, and it seems pretty good. Because it just grabs what's already inside of the page, like the back end. So it shouldn't really hallucinate in the way that it'll hallucinate with pictures. And if you're using a refreshable Braille display, JAWS also presents the summary in Braille. Then they also have this thing called Smart Labeler, and I think this is the thing that I was really excited about. And essentially, you will come across group forms, and like there will be elements that you cannot really identify. Like JAWS won't give them a name, and you have no context for what they are. And so Smart Labeler takes the context of the page that you're visiting and tries to make sense of it all, and will give it a label that makes sense. And so, as they say on the website, it names over 90% of previously unlabeled buttons, links, interface elements, and it makes guesswork non-existent and will enable faster, more accurate web navigation. So essentially, if you come to a field that doesn't have a name, Smart Labeler uses AI to figure out what it most likely is. Picture Smart is also available on JAWS. It's not a brand new thing, but it is a really cool feature that you can use as as a blind person to get information about pictures beyond just like the very basic alt text and even just a basic description, because it has a like AI chat component where, as an example, I have used it with math content, and I've noticed that it still doesn't do really well with graphs. And I can't really speak as to why. I just assume that they're just a very complex thing for AI to try to interpret. But for straight math, like equations or things with exponents, it's really good at kind of setting that aside for you. And if you have specific questions, or even if you wanted to have it reformatted, like it was sent to you as a picture or a PDF or whatever inaccessible format, you can ask for it to print it all out for you in text and then copy paste it into a text editor of your choosing. But it does so much more. It can describe files for you, controls, clipboard images, icons, what's on your screen, on your window. And so it has a lot of really, really cool uses. I also wanted to talk about Vispero Companion, which is essentially FS Companion rebranded. And and it's a website that you visit and you ask it questions related to JAWS, and it gives you what it thinks is the best way to address your query. As an example, in Google Drive, I asked it, "How do I get to the new button?" And it said Alt N. Which is great because it saves you a lot of keystrokes, especially as a beginning JAWS user if you're tabbing through the entire site to try to find the new button or the create button. Um, Vispero Companion does a really good job of finding that for you. But as another example, I asked it in Google Classroom, how do I find my classes? And in a nutshell, it said tab, where there are so many better ways to find your classes than using the tab key. Tab is definitely not anywhere near my top five choices. But for beginning Braille users, like sure. However, as you become a more proficient Braille or JAWS user, you want to minimize keystrokes. And so, what I've learned through the years is heading level twos are your classes, and so you can use either headings or the number two to get to them a lot faster. And Vispero Companion was not able to give me this information, but for other things that aren't quite like so specific, Vispero Companion does a really good job, and I think that we should utilize it more as teachers. Oh, and that is what I have for AI in JAWS for you all.
All right, thanks, Max. And that leads us to AI for teachers, which I'm going to talk about. Um, I just wanted to add a couple of things about, or mention a couple of things about using AI with students in things that, as a teacher that you might want to try before you uh, introduce these to students if they're not already using um, these different apps and programs. So just testing out the accessibility of the apps themselves. A lot of them are fairly accessible, but just a good thing as a teacher to test out ahead of time to see if you run into any issues with accessibility. Um, Also, just uh, looking for checking for accuracy. So, trying them out on your own, just to see how accurate they are. Like Max was talking about, um, sometimes you will get really accurate answers and descriptions, and other times it may be way off. So, it's good for you as a teacher. It's helpful to have a sense of the accuracy of the app that you're using. Just something to try out. So it's in ways that AI can be helpful for you as a teacher, there are several. If you're an itinerant teacher and you're traveling around to different schools and maybe different districts, and you have a lot of kids on your caseload, you may be strapped for time. So having ways to streamline your workflow can be really helpful. So you can use AI to help you, for example, create templates. If you don't already have templates that you're using for different kinds of reports and record keeping and things like that, or if you want to create new ones for yourself, you can have AI help you create something like that. And here I'm talking about common AI apps like Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT. Um, I played around with this a little bit just to see how it would work. Um, so say you're going to work with a student on introductory Braille note lessons, let's say, and you want to plan out the first few weeks of lessons, say the first 3 weeks of lessons. You could ask one of the AI programs to help you with that, to help develop a curriculum. Um, I would be really cautious and check for accuracy. Um, but it can also help you come up with kind of an overview or a plan. And sometimes it may give you suggestions for activities maybe that you hadn't thought of. So it can be helpful in that way. Again, it's like it's not going to do it doesn't do it for you, but it can be kind of like a helper or an assistant to make things go a little easier or just to give you ideas that you might not have come up with on your own. Um, as far as materials and preparation, things like that for teachers, you can use AI to do things like create alt text. So creating descriptions, which is kind of what we've been talking about um, earlier, but creating descriptions of photos and images, of a whiteboard, of text, even. So now we're able to get more than just a simple like OCR kind of text um, reading or text recognition, but even more complex descriptions of complex texts and images. So think about like um, math images, things like graphs and things like that. So AI can help um, to create descriptions of more complicated images like you might find in a geometry class, or more complicated text descriptions. I think of like elementary school textbooks that have lots of little pop-outs and blurbs and quotations. And in the past, OCRs a lot of times had a trouble reading all of that accurately, would get confused. So AI can do a much better job of providing that information and those descriptions. Um, Also, you can use it to create audio description. So a lot of the general AI programs can help you with this. And there are more, um, what not focused, but more specialized programs that can help you with audio description. And they can actually find, within a video, find areas that are more purely visual that might need descriptions. So that can be a real time saver if you've ever tried to add subtitles or your own audio description to a video. It can take a long time sometimes, and it's hard to make it accurate. Um, you can also use it to help you create tactile images. So you can have AI look at an image for you and help you identify ways to make it tactily understandable and to um, make a more accurate representation. So it can identify where you might need to make things higher or lower, just as an example. Um, yeah, I think for me, those are the main areas. So kind of in helping you to prepare materials and make materials more accessible. Um, and also to a degree like in well with organization and then also with lesson planning and curriculum. We have a lot of as teachers of the visually impaired, we have a lot of resources available online in terms of lesson plans and curricula for um, teaching, for example, assistive technology. But it's also nice, we have our own ideas sometimes or ways that we want to teach. Um, and assistive technology can be a helper in that way and coming up with more individualized lesson plans and curricula for students. All right, I think that's all I have to say on that for tonight. And Allison, were you going to wrap up for us?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. We have two more this school year of this workshop series. The last two are going to be on uh, Braille note-taking technology. I say that a little hesitantly as there's some really cool Braille note-taking technologies coming out this year that are a bit different than a standard display or a standard note taker. And then we're also going to talk about math. So math um, and and how technology can help with math. So those are our last two. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.